Welcome to the Always On podcast. I'm your host, Duncan MacPherson. And on this podcast, our objective is to empower our audience, which are very high caliber fee-for-service professionals, to always be working on their business and on themselves. And on today's podcast, I had a really great in-depth conversation with Linda Sherman, who is the co-founder of Financially Empowered and a creator of the, and I love this, a creator of the Go There, Ask Her strategy, which is all part of an advisor's ability to connect more deeply with female investors. And as you know, the way things are unfolding with demography, women investors are going to be responsible for a whole lot more money over the coming years than they are today. And even today, it's a big number. So hopefully you enjoy this podcast. And if you do, please like and share and tell your colleagues. And if you have any ideas for themes and topics you'd like to hear down the road, just let us know. As always, thanks for listening. Today, we're going to have a conversation about insights and best practices for how to position your value with female clients. Of course, that can be the wife or significant other of a primary client. It could be somebody who's less involved in the family relationship. You know, practically as a fiduciary, this makes sense, but strategically, it's so important as a lifelong planner to dig your well before you're thirsty. So to have this conversation, I'm very excited to have an incredible authority on this topic, Linda Sherman. Linda and her team have developed an approach and a great reputation for how to expand how you're perceived, how you're described, and ensure that you're taking care of the entire family. Linda, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
So everybody, while I'm thinking about it, if you want to learn more about Linda and her team, I encourage you to go to financiallyempowered.com. Linda, I have to tell you, as a man, when the first time I went to your website, it got me immediately. In terms of just helping me understand this as being a potential unmet need or blind spot. You have a slogan. It says, "Go there, ask her," which is so succinct. So kudos on that. And so give us a little backstory on how you got into this space and what a typical day in the life is.
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, again, thank you for having me. And I'm so excited to be here. So my partner, Joy Prefer-Cohen, and I have each spent, don't want to say it, but it's true, over 40 years each in financial services, working with advisors and their clients. And we believe so strongly in the power of advice and the client-advisor relationship. So we were driven to start Financially Empowered because we know there's a great opportunity and a very big problem that will not go away, we hope, until we can make a difference here. So let's talk the good news. Let's talk about the opportunity. Women are going to control, in the US, 2/3 of household assets by 2030. That is 4 years. That number is going from 10 trillion to 30 trillion. That 30 trillion is greater than US GDP and a quarter of world GDP. So I'm tongue-in-cheek when I say, is that big enough for you? It's probably more than half an advisor's book. Yet, so that's the opportunity. So what is the problem that Joy and I are so frustrated with, and our team? We're frustrated that this following stat has been around for at least 15 years documented. 70% of married female clients fire their advisor after divorce or death within 1 year. So, think about that. What industry thinks it's okay to have 70% of their married female clients leave and do absolutely nothing about it? So we are there about we don't want to do absolutely nothing about it. So we spent a good year interviewing women, advisors, estate planning, insurance specialists, and my favorite part was, oh my gosh, we have them on Zoom interviewing the couples. So for the women, we asked them what they need to feel connected to their advisor. And the answer, Duncan, I'm sure you will not be surprised, had nothing to do with investments and investment performance. They want connection and peace of mind. So we created programs to help advisors focus on the how to effectively engage clients and their female clients. And unfortunately, I'm not going to list them all, but when you look at all the recent studies, you can do New York Life, Fidelity, BMO, UBS, there's literally been no positive change for women in investing. And I can get into those studies if you'd like. And then on the client side, I started marketing this new thing called fee-based accounts and access to institutional managers in the 80s. And I was doing client events then, I'm doing them today, and I hear the same thing from the women. It's too complicated, they defer to their husbands, they don't know where to start, they feel overwhelmed, they don't have their financial acts together, and they lack the confidence. So our team here at Financially Empowered feels like we have to be successful, we have to change the narrative here, and I'm gonna be real quick here because 80% of men die married and 80% of women die single. And 90% of women will control their finances at some time in their life. So we are here to drive that 70% down to zero. And our mantra, yes, go there, ask her, which we've trademarked, which means go there, have the meaningful conversations, ask her questions, and then our theme is to give her reasons to stay and be the advisor women move to. So that's probably a long-winded answer to your question. But I do want to just say one thing because it happened yesterday. I hugged a grieving widow, and she had just unexpectedly lost her husband, who died at 67. And I guess I say to anybody listening today that I'm going to talk about asset growth and retention and the power of referrals, because nothing's better than a woman when it comes to referrals. But really, on a human level, it's doing what's right. So that's a big part of it.
Okay, well, yeah, absolutely. It's a great way to sort of wrap that intro. But you covered a lot of ground that I want to get into in a little bit more detail. First of all, I have to back up for a second. I need to come back to your website for just a moment before we get into my list of questions I want to ask. Again, financiallyempowered.com. I spent a lot of time there. I love the positioning, the phraseology. It's professional, it's respectful, but it just connected. It resonated with me. And, you know, you have this sort of positioning identity, branding. It's the women whisperers of Wall Street, which is very interesting. And I have to tell you something, like as a marketing and branding coach and consultant, when I look at a website, and you can apply this to any website in financial services, I default to the acronym AICA. Okay, so attention, interest, confidence, action. And Linda, your website quickly, succinctly moves somebody through that progression. The attention, you've got great hooks, and the way I know they're great hooks is I instantly said to myself, I get it. And an advisor should want that. What you're talking about, the value you're providing. The interest is your website also held my attention beyond sort of the curb appeal. I didn't dismiss it. You held my attention. You developed my interest, which then starts to build my confidence that this is really resonating with me. This is a blind spot. This is an unmet need I need to address in my business. And then, of course, action. You make it very clear in terms of how someone can take action. So I can't overstate the importance of a financial advisor investing some time and getting to know this deliverable more succinctly. So, okay, now let's get into my array of questions here. First of all, I'm going to assume that in the meantime, an advisor who goes there and asks her when the relationship is still in place before a critical life event, that will do no harm. That will actually strengthen the relationship overall in the meantime, aside from what might be coming down the road. Is that safe to say?
Yes, I mean, there is no downside to strengthening the relationship. However, I am very sensitive to the status quo, where often women are deliberately or not taking a back seat. That's where they're comfortable. Maybe they haven't been invited in. Maybe they're not comfortable at this party. Maybe they don't want to take a seat at the money table. It's not what they were conditioned to do. Maybe it's somebody else's job in the family. So I am sensitive to if the relationship has been with, let's just say in this example, the patriarch, okay, him. And I just did a CSA training, and they were laughing because I said, do you know how many times in a day I hear from my advisors, ask him, call him, do this for him, him, and she was like, oh my God, I haven't heard ask her in forever. I was kind of laughing anecdotally, right? So I do want to be sensitive there. So I am very careful in saying, get his buy-in, if it is a him, the lead partner. Get his buy-in, and to say, look, let's get real. You might die before your wife. And do you want anyone to take advantage of her and your hard-earned money? I've heard a million reasons. I've been in those meetings when he says, I'm not, she doesn't need to know, I don't want her to spend all my money. I mean, I've heard everything, right? But having somebody take advantage of her, or, something not so good could happen, is a motivator. So I think we need to get his buy-in, to invite her in, maybe for a separate meeting. And if she's overwhelmed, I just had an advisor tell me this, the wife didn't want to do it, literally, so they went to the adult children. Bring in your adult children. Let's start with a meeting with all of you, and your son, your daughter can take the lead. So I think it isn't just, I can tell you a couple stories, but I think we need to be sensitive to that, about the whole relationship.
Okay, so I thought about you because I was talking to a financial advisor about this topic, and he had a completely, like a massive eye opener. So he had a strategy and tactical meeting with a couple, and he admitted to me that he was pressing a little bit around defending a couple of his decisions, and he's getting technical. And he noticed that the primary client's wife was not really interested. Long story short, because, he was saying to me, he said, there's an old saying in financial services, if you're early, you're perceived as being wrong, right? And so it was a very interesting conversation. He was just defending, because he said, this is coming. Anyway, long story short, he was talking to the client, the primary client, afterward on the phone, and he just happened to mention, hey, I'm sorry I got so far into the technical and the jargon there. I noticed that your wife was somewhat disconnected from the conversation. And the client said to him, it's all good, but she just doesn't really care too much about the nuts and bolts. And she also doesn't want to seem dumb, because she doesn't know really what you're talking about. So don't worry, it's all good. But that for him was, oh my gosh. And my response to him was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I said to him, one of the best things you can do to engage the couple, I'm not trivializing the technical and the core competency, but talk about what financial independence does, talk about what matters to the client, and really focus on goals. And I said, Linda, use form, literally write the acronym FORM on the agenda in front of the clients, populated family, occupation, recreation, and money, and ask both of them to share their aspirations about the next 5 to 10 years. And I've seen many examples and heard of many examples where an advisor, you can see the body language of both clients. They lean in, they engage. It's not like just open-endedly saying, hey, what's important to you and what are your goals? It's actually an exercise that makes it easy for them to populate and open up. And so anyway, I'd love your input on being a goals-based advisor with that aspect of the process to engage both people in where this is all going.
Okay, Well, two pieces. We met with a team who currently runs, are you sitting down, over $100 billion. One team. They, one of the big takeaways that I learned from them, because after our training, they ran a spreadsheet of all their clients and sat down with the partners and asked the partners to examine their relationship with her. And what we learned through this discussion is, and this is a really good thing to remember, do not confuse attendance with connection. We have been with enough women to know they are completely intimidated to be themselves. We met a woman who literally never knew what her advisor was talking about. She thought an equity was her home line of credit because she had a home equity line of credit. She literally never understood and does not have, sadly, the confidence to say, wait a minute, I'm lost. And we know from the 70% stat, women will not confront him with their dissatisfaction. And once he's gone and that connection is gone, she's leaving because they did not bring her in a way she is comfortable. So we like to say, make the meetings meaningful to her. So, what might be most important to her is, maybe I need long-term care insurance because I'm paying 20 grand for my dad and I'm paying my, 10 grand for my brother, and like, who's going to take care of me? I mean, maybe that's like her number one thing, fear. So yes, we need to bring her in a way she's comfortable. So we just worked with the team, and it's so interesting because after the training now, they have a process. So when they're in a meeting in their conference room and they see she's checking out, just like you described, they have agreed as a team in the meeting to say, hey, Susie, I'm noticing you might not be following. Would you like us to, break it down now? Do you want me to call you later? Can I set up a separate meeting with you tomorrow? They literally have a strategy to make sure that her buy-in, her comfort level is addressed and how she wants it to be. That's a game changer.
Just being respectfully offered that, even if they don't take somebody up on it, is probably going to have an impact.
Yes. It is acknowledging that, right, I guess what's always surprised me that the 70% stat exists, because if advisors are losing the women, isn't it intuitive to engage her and make her
no idea. And back to your point about process, when the advisor demonstrates that, yes, it's part of our intention to make sure everybody's bought in, but there's also a process in place. That's how you ensure that this thing is sustainable and nothing falls through the cracks, if you can bookend the two. Now, the 70% stat, I'm curious, how soon does that happen?
Wait, I want to go back to something you said because I didn't hit on it strong enough. The goals-based planning is a no-brainer place to start. If you lead, it's so funny now, a lot of talk about, alternatives. I just laugh at the word. I was just at dinner with a couple the other night, and, the husband's talking about alternatives, and the wife's like, what's an alternative? What kind of a name is alternative? Alternative to what? What kind of asset class calls themselves alternatives? Everything that we take for granted and how we communicate is completely unintuitive to somebody who doesn't know our business. So goals-based, so, we trademark Go There. It's funny, I chatted with a family member when we were trademarking it, and he goes, well, what does Go There mean? And his wife, give him a sock and say, go there. It means like have, women know how to go there, right? We like get deep and go. So we really want to go there. So for example, like we encourage questions like, right, will I outlive my money? What if I become suddenly single? I'm like the one on the team that I go there. I was in the World Trade Center in 1993 for the first bombing. My stepson was there on 9/11. He survived. I was in management. I was giving body counts. I am all about having a plan. And, so we want to say, what happens to my family if I die tonight? I am a big fan of estate planning as a part of that wealth planning. So yes, you need to get them to the financial goal. To me, the estate planning is the super glue because now you are in her lane. When you ask her about her children, who's going to get them if she's not here? What's important to her, her charities, her values, her legacy. You are now in her lane. She gets to do most of the talking. And you get to make sure she gets that estate plan done. And then of course we talk about insurance planning. So I wholeheartedly, and one of the problems I think is many advisors are most proficient in investing in performance conversations, and that is not resonating with women. And I'm going to share one story, and you'll have to tell me to stop because I have so many stories for every area. But we spent 2.5 hours interviewing a woman who fired two Forbes best in state advisor teams here in Los Angeles. And when I said to her, she inherited these accounts from her father, and she was serviced by these two teams, two wirehouses. When I said, did they say things like, your account went up so much, you beat the market, your SMAs did this, your mutual funds did that? She said they did, and it was all gibberish to me. I hated it. Hated it. She ended up firing them both and went to a planner in the San Fernando Valley, and he told her that she can stay in her home for as long as she lives and leave money to her son. That is all she wanted from our industry. So why, and she even said, they sent me chocolates at Christmas, I hated everything. So why did we deprive her of peace of mind for 20 years? I'm not happy.
Well, not intentional. I mean, yeah, I've been saying for a long time, there's this mantra, in the spirit of reading the room, like knowing who your audience is. You're not trying to impress somebody. You're trying to impress upon them. You're trying to impress upon them that you understand what's important to them, what matters to them. And the best way you do that is to be diagnostic. Trying to impress somebody with my credentials, skill set, and, my successes, it's a data dump. And it's kind of like Charlie Brown's teachers. I'm not going to downplay it. Like, people want to know that you've got the goods, but they don't need to know everything you know. They just want to know that there's an alignment. This is what I want. This is what you do. Is it in sync?
If you're like most advisors, you're constantly balancing two priorities: growth and consistency. That's why we built the Turnkey Advisor membership, a community of like-minded advisors who understand the importance of working on the business, not just in it. Membership includes proven strategies for growing, teaming, scaling, or exiting, with full resources and support, including access to Pareto Academy, things once only available to our private coaching clients. If you're serious about bringing structure and stability to your business, this is where consistent results are achieved. Learn more at paretosystems.com/turnkey.
Again, not to trivialize it, but, it's interesting. Some advisors I've had very almost testy conversations with about the dynamic between being direct with somebody and being respectful. And I would argue the world craves directness. Now, let me ask you something, and I'm putting you on the spot because I didn't clear this with you in our previous chats, but do you have some content in terms of like perfect questions that an advisor could go to your website and get, or get you on LinkedIn from, where it could just help them feel confident about being direct and asking questions that are Socratic and will unearth the motivators? Do you have things like that?
Yeah, it's based off of so we have 3 one-page guides. And I think just generally 3 one-page guides, okay? And I can just share right now the nuggets, okay? So the first one gets them to the financial plan. And it's the 3 questions I just said. Will I live my money? What if I become suddenly single? And what are my numbers? Oh heavens, just start there. Ask a woman to write down her investable net worth. First of all, use those terms, her eyeballs are going to roll back and get right back in her head. So you need to define what we're talking about. So we walk through, I think just step number one is the planning process. Write down your numbers, what are they invested in, what are the wrappers, because we have all these names for them, right? What we put them in, ETFs and SMAs, but those are just the investments, how we hold them. We have the plan, asset allocation, and then the plan. So we really stress breaking down financial planning into a very kind of simple process. And I just want to share with you, at a recent client event, I had a woman come up to me afterwards and say, Linda, I don't know if I have enough money. Okay, how much do you have? I don't know. Okay, what are you invested in? Mutual funds. Okay, what's in the funds? I don't know. I thought they were the investments. Okay. Just what I just described, steps 1, 2, and 3. What are your numbers? What are you invested in? How do you own them? Let's make sure your asset allocation is right, because that's going to adjust the risk, return, and now we're going to have the plan. That's going to give us the bottom line to answer the 3 questions. I just asked. Are you going to outlive your money? And what if I become suddenly single? Just that in English is step number 1. That would be amazing. That's kind of what our guide walks through. Nobody needs our guides. Everyone on this call has way more sophisticated stuff, but they can get to that. And then I'm a really big believer in making sure every woman has a current estate plan, whether they have a little bit of money or a lot, right? Because I'm obsessed with a healthcare directive. I am obsessed with so we can chat about that maybe in a separate conversation, but about how to turn, transactional calls, service calls into relationship building. We can talk about how estate planning, we can use that. And then of course, insurance solutions. So we use our guides where we talk about, do you have enough care to, money to pay for care 24/7? What if there's a sudden death? How are you going to support the family? So we just use our kind of go there questions, which you currently use on our guides.
Okay, terrific. I'm thinking as I get to understand this a little bit better, there's got to be a webinar you and I can do to get into this and talk specifically about an action plan and things you can deploy.
Well, Duncan, just so you know, we can do that. We've got a CE approved client advisor event that gives all the meat.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second. So you do client events on behalf of advisors or you do events for advisors. Is that right?
Yes, we do advisor training. That's kind of our flagship. And often we are then invited in and encourage the client conversation, because nothing is better. We'll do it for them, right? So just let's get women on the phone. Those women on a Zoom then invite their mothers and their friends and their daughters. And so we, create the awareness there.
Okay, excellent. Again, this is really helping me understand in terms of fee worthiness as technology creeps more and more into the space and into the world, the emotional intelligence, the EQ component. I have a very good friend who told me the story about his mother. His mother's pretty affluent. And she happened to say to my friend, "Oh, I really love my financial advisor." And my friend said, "Oh, really?" To his mom. "Oh, really? Why do you really love your financial advisor?" And she said something like, "Well, he just gets it. He cares." And he asked her, he goes, do you know what your investment holdings are?" "No." "Do you know what your rates of return are?" "No." And my friend said, "My mom's smart. She's shrewd, but she has an emotional intelligence that just, there's a connectivity at a different level there. That's quite fascinating. So again, when you can balance the IQ of the skill set, and all of the qualities around moral compass and fiduciary and professionalism, with the emotional intelligence, I mean, that's what's going to make an advisor fee worthy as the business becomes more commoditized. Now, I have another question for you here. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Because to me, it's all about process. It is about process. And process starts with awareness, which might be able to drive the change in behavior and habits. And maybe someone on the team has to own this process. So interviewed a couple. I want to get a contract. I told you about a woman who, hated her advisor. Let me tell you about a woman who loved her work. And this is how women see. Okay, we love, like I love an air fryer, and I told everyone I know, and that's 20 people I know have an air fryer, right? Like we love things, we don't love things. We're very, we know how to communicate, right? We'll talk about referrals and hopefully somewhere around here. But this couple, why did she love her advisor? He sent me an email about it because when they went in for their meeting, it was him and her husband. They asked them for their goals. He answered. And then they turned to her and said, well, that's his goal. What's your goal? Her goal was the swimming pool. Okay. And then at every meeting, if she doesn't attend one, they include her in all communications, all email. He's included. Her name first. She doesn't attend a lot of meetings. When she doesn't attend, they see her permission. He's the finance guy. They call her and ask if she wants a recap and let me explain what's going on. They literally insist every step of the way that she is involved. She loves them. She refers proactively to them. And you can just see the contrast. Mm-hmm. So I live in a world where I'm hopeful that advisors will be inspired to think about this, look and create that process. So when she's checked out in a meeting or no, she doesn't attend, what are you going to do about it? But we have terms today.
That's powerful. And I say, I wish I had a buck for every time I've said to an advisor, develop and refine and deploy a process because it will liberate you to go deeper into the relationship. So you're not grasping, reacting, nothing's falling through the cracks. It's airtight. And when you find that sweet spot between the quantitative and the qualitative is so important. It's hard to put your finger on the bedside manner in terms of how that impacts a relationship. But yeah, I see enough examples where it's just absolutely key. So,
and Duncan, I will just add, if keeping her isn't enough, she's the gateway to the next generation. I mean, the stats are worse for next gen. 80% of clients' advisors fire their parents' advisor. I think 69% have never met them. So I always say, if you lose her, you lose them. And I can give lots of stories about that. So this isn't just good business to keep her. It is access to the next generation. And you can imagine they've already got their accounts maybe at Robinhood elsewhere, but when you bring their mom in and take good care of her before maybe traditionally something happens to dad, and you've shown good care and you've done gifting and you've brought them in and you opened up accounts for them when they were 529 when they were kids, they're more likely to want to stay with you, right? Because you've shown your value. We just
I want to talk to you about that in terms of family meetings. It's funny. I first understood the power of demography in the early 90s. Now, obviously, we're much further down the path today, but in the early 90s, I read this thing on what I think was called the Levi's syndrome. And apparently, I mean, there was a time where Levi's owned the jeans market. And then slowly it started to crater and others crept in. And the realization was that apparently it's not cool to wear the same kind of jeans your dad wears. So the next generation said, I'm not wearing those because he's a nerd. I'm wearing these because these are cooler. And it's fascinating. So Levi's had to reinvent themselves and do line extension and expand their brand to appeal to the next generation. And oversimplification, of course, but interesting study nonetheless. Two questions I've been wanting to ask you. Number one, to your point about the significant other and the next generation, do you do family meetings on behalf of a financial advisor?
We just we haven't. I know there are experts, I've seen them on your program that specialize in that, but we encourage that conversation. So we're really at the very step core. Our goal is to inspire advisors to, we want to have the greatest impact. I mean, Joy and I, 40 years each, okay? So like we're on the back nine here, right? And before we pass on this planet, like we want to make a difference. So we feel like we have the most leverage with advisor awareness. And so that's really where we focus our attention. And then we get a lot of, personal joy by meeting their clients because we see, that light bulb go off and the relationships deepen. So we've really spent most of our time, and then we encourage the advisor to do that.
Ah, very noble. I love it. Hey, are women better advocates than men?
For themselves financially, or in what way?
Hey, good distinction. I mean, for a financial professional, like the ultimate is for a financial advisory firm to organically grow exclusively through introductions. So I'm curious, like, are women better? Do they have stronger persuasive impact as advocates for a financial advisor?
Oh, Duncan, my favorite. Well, I have a couple favorite stats in the business, but this one just about takes the cake. So I joke and say, you want to stop talking about prospecting? You want to not have any meetings anymore about prospecting? Focus on women. I was just introduced at a meeting. I was at a complex at a wirehouse, and the complex manager in his introduction says the following: my mom just fired her financial advisor after her husband died, my dad. She's already moved to a new advisor and has already, it's been a couple months, referred 8 clients to him. And by the way, I do want to make this: women do not have a preference for female financial advisors. They do not. And they crave the connection and the peace of mind, and so they're pretty, they're gender neutral. And we've been trying for decades to increase the percentage of women in this business. I personally been trying that. I used to be in management. It's been really hard to do, which is a shame because it's the best industry on the planet. But it doesn't matter, male or female. Everyone can do the engaging, obviously.
It's interesting. I've been in situations with my wife where she was given the opportunity to wave someone's flag and she didn't go there. And I was like, wow. And I talked to her later. Why didn't you go there? Why didn't you make an introduction or at least sing someone's praises? Well, I know you could have. And she said to me, she goes, and clearly there was a disconnect. Like she liked the person who she could have made the introduction to, but was not crystal clear about the value in the process to the point where she felt like she was going to get involved. And that's basically what she said. I don't want to get involved in that. There could be blowback. No good deed goes unpunished. It's just easier not to go there. So that's an interesting sort of window into the psychology of advocacy. So demystify. And this is what I've been saying, Linda, for a long time to advisors. The moment your client understands that there is no hidden agenda, that their friend does not need to become your client for you to view it as being an important initial meeting with a friend. It's just, I'll be a sounding board. They can bounce some things off me, ask me some questions, talk about things that might be concerning them, but there's no expectation it needs to go anywhere. It's a value-added service that they and you will find to be of value. That is such a huge aspect of what can amplify introductions, and then your fit process can determine if there's a good fit and if they want to pursue it beyond that. But interesting. My next question here, and this is something that just popped up. Many financial advisors tell me that their ideal client is a first-generation self-made business owner, entrepreneur, because they're hardworking, they're self-motivated, they're delegators, and they've got enterprise value. They might not have massive investable assets yet, but there's going to be a liquidity event, and they've got advocacy and influence. They're just, for many advisors, that's my dream client. But now I'm starting to wonder, as it relates to the family and the spousal dynamic, when things are not going well for an entrepreneur, I mean, when they're deep into the adversity of, hiccups and speed bumps that happen, that's where the resilience is born out of. They tend to shield some of the things that are bothering them from their wife. It's like, I don't want her to worry about this. I'll get through this. I don't want her to worry about this. And it creates a sort of unintended disconnect. I'm just curious if you have any insight on that in the meantime, until there is a liquidity event, and how a financial advisor can help navigate that. That just occurred to me.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm thinking just have her involved from the beginning. I mean, does that mean that I need to alter my lifestyle and the kids are only going to go to private school, when we get the monetization event? Like, I feel like it's fair to say, to bring her in early, to say, we're on this journey together. Here's the upside, right? We're all going to benefit from that. But here's what it means just from a planning perspective. Hey, I wouldn't mind, shopping at the discount store for a couple of years if I knew that, hey, my husband could get the big win one day and I'm going to be, shopping at the high-end market. So I feel like bringing her in from a planning perspective is just what's right. And then this reminds me of a crazy story. I just want to share it for if the advisors are focusing on this market. We worked with an RIA. This is unbelievable. Who had a phone call from a woman that said the following. Okay, this is a dream. Will you manage my $500 million? Excuse me? It's a husband and wife team. They formed a business. It sold. They both got money. They divorced. And she said the bankers, the advisors, everyone was so rude to me. They treated me, and this is her words, like I was invisible. I am not giving them a dime. And she called this woman RIA to say, will you manage the money? So I think it's important. There is going to be a payday one day. If it's her business too, put her name on the deck. Invite her to the meetings. I mean, right? So every case is different. Maybe it's just his business. Sometimes it's a family business. So I think everyone's different, but I don't see any upside in keeping her in the dark.
Most CRMs promise efficiency, but too often they just add complexity, more clicks, more confusion, and less time with clients. Toolkit CRM was built to change that. It's simple, intuitive, and designed specifically for financial advisors. What makes it different? Toolkit isn't just software. It's Pareto's best practices hardwired into your day-to-day process. It's the client experience engine that ensures consistency, elevates every interaction, and brings the Pareto philosophy to life in your business. If you want a CRM that actually works for you, instead of the other way around, take a look at Toolkit CRM. To learn more, visit toolkitcrm.com and schedule a no-obligation demo, and see how easy it is to bring the best practices to life in your business.
Definitely do. I mean, that you said the magic word, getting your team on board and creating a plan for female engagement. And it varies by every team. Often, maybe the lead advisor doesn't want to change much of their behavior. They're going to have maybe the team do the rest, and they're not going to do much. I mean, you can do everything. You can still get buy-in, and he doesn't have to do anything differently. He can still maintain the relationships that he has, but we're going to have the team develop everything else. So a lot of things here. I have a lot of ideas. One is conduct a book review and examine the relationships with both partners if they're married. So I already told you about don't confuse attendance with connection. And I told you about the woman who fired her Forbes advisors. And when she's in the meeting, right, and she's checked out, or she over and over says, I don't need to attend. No, you're gonna say, can I come to your house? I just wanna share with you the current plan, hear what you have to say, offer that separate meeting. Find a way that she is comfortable to connect with you. Maybe invite her to a client event, invite her and her children, have a birthday lunch, have her invite her friends, whatever you need to do to bring her in. Then, one of our really big mantras, as I mentioned to you earlier, is to turn transactional calls into relationship building calls. This is a fabulous place to use all of your team members. So when she calls in, as I used to for a 529 distribution, ask her if she has an updated healthcare directive or financial directive for your child going to college, right? Something happens, they end up in the hospital, you want to be able to talk to the doctors, pay their bills, or they call in, happens all the time, for a medical procedure for her, her husband, her child, her parents, or they're going on a trip abroad. Why aren't we asking, do you have an updated healthcare directive? This is going to ignite referrals. I have a lot of stories about that, and even just life changes. So there's marriage, and there's divorce, and there's widows, and there's new babies, and they become grandparents. Yes, 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 say congratulations and send them a piggy bank. But add the meat, add what she cares about. Okay, you're a grandparent. Are you updating your beneficiaries on your estate plan? Can we start gifting to another grandchild? Let's get $19,000 out of the estate. Let's do that for all 10 grandkids, right? Opening up 529. So we are really an advocate that women call in all the time, and this is your opportunity to connect. So, and then when she feels motivated by what you've said, you are going to hit her sweet spot, and she's going to tell her friends and ignite that 20 times as we chatted about. So whether it's offering a separate meeting, so she calls in about something unrelated, say, you know what, we haven't met with you in a while. Would you like to come in or set up a Zoom to review your financial plan? I want to make sure nothing has changed. And then, of course, I've already told you I'm obsessed with the healthcare directive. I just want to tell you that the healthcare directive is the easy way to get a woman's attention. Duncan, I shared with you the story that I was explaining to a woman what I did for my business. She says, what do you do? I was at a funeral, and I was at a funeral, and we were at the reception afterwards, and I said, well, I trained financial advisors how to better connect with women. And she said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, so for example, when you call in for 529, I want that team to say, does your child have an updated healthcare and financial directive? And then she's like, what do you mean? I just dropped my kid at college. Well, this is what they do. These plans, the directives do. She said, I will not sleep till I get this done. And just funny story, my husband, who was not her lawyer, she had an estate plan, but she didn't have these documents for her child. My husband was not her lawyer. He was sitting next to me at this reception. She basically said, David, I want you to do this, and I'm emailing you the information now. And on the Saturday, my husband did her healthcare directive and financial plan because she would not sleep, her words, till she gets this done. So, it's same version of the air fryer. Okay, women, so she's going to call her friends whose kids are going to college and say, my financial advisor made sure this happened, and that is way more powerful than the latest investment idea. And then I just have to share a terrorizing story. I was at a table with a group of women, and they were telling this woman that she had to marry her boyfriend so that he could be on her healthcare directive. And I said, okay, ladies, no, not the case. Anyone can be selected. They thought I was wrong. We had to Google and show that I wasn't. And I this is what keeps me up at night. I'm like literally terrorized how badly the world needs our advice on the things that matter. Like, she's not going to go marry someone to have a named healthcare director, right? There's so much misinformation about the most important things. So I will just share one thing, Duncan, and that is the recent studies show that in an average hour-long meeting, an advisor speaks for, do you want to guess how long?
50 minutes.
Yeah, 53 minutes. Leaving 7 for the client. So it goes without saying, how can you get to know her, right? When you're talking, and then I ask, what are you spending most of the time talking about? Is it investments or performance or the Fed or inflation, or does your deck have 20 pages on inflation? I mean, really. So we have some work to do there, but all so easily fixable with just a little bit of awareness. Easy to turn down that 53.7, right? Easy to ask her questions.
Yeah, go there. Well, I've got one last thing I want to comment on, but you reminded me, you talked about the difference between the transactional and the directional. I had a conversation with an advisor about this not long ago, because we were talking about an initiative and he kind of thought it was like a box checked, like, okay, I've done that. I go, no. This is fluid and dynamic. This is the part of the lifeblood of your business, not unlike this. You don't just go there once like a campaign and now it's over. Because relationship management, here's the dynamic about relationships. Relationships drift. Familiarity and loyalty fatigue can knock a relationship drifting off track. And so what I said to this advisor is, you have to be a broken record, imprinting your people, your practice, and your process. Your people, make sure your clients are as connected to your bench as they are to you. Make sure they understand and appreciate your client experience. This is what it means to be our client. This is what you can expect from us. And keep imprinting the process. This is part of our process. This is the next step in the process. Like, just keep water dripping on a stone will make a mark over time. You talk about healthcare initiatives, like part of our process is long-term care. You see, that's different positioning. It's not like me opportunistically trying to sell somebody long-term care. No, I don't want you to buy that from me. I want you to buy into our process. So this has got to be directionally positioned as part of the advisor's process and part of the client experience, and the team needs to be bought in. So let me close. This has been great, by the way. And I feel the conviction. I feel the calling that this is your purpose. I mean, that's powerful. So best way for somebody to get a hold of you, I'm going to assume financiallyempowered.com is a great place to start.
Yeah, I mean, info at financiallyempowered or .com, or Linda at financiallyempowered. Just come right to me.
Oh, that's your email. Okay.
That's
Okay,
my
perfect.
email.
LinkedIn, and you're active elsewhere outside of the site, so they can find you there as well.
Yep.
Okay.
And Duncan, I would just say on that, we have really seen CSAs. I spend a lot of time in the wirehouses, and the CSAs, registered CSAs, have been really pivotal for implementation. We had one attend, a meeting and went back to her 3/4 best in state advisors and said, I want to do everything. And they were so supportive. They gave her 50 names of women to call. And we coached, a little bit of coaching, but it's unbelievable. The first lady's home she went to, she found 3 more accounts and got 3 referrals from meeting number 1. But my favorite part of this story, and this is from a 24-year-old registered CSA, a husband died, the money was going to leave, they called and said, we want her. They literally would only call to speak to her to say, we're staying and we want her, the CSA, the registered CSA. That's why we're staying. She prevented a $10 million account from leaving. It's unbelievable.
Linda, that's a
So
great story.
you get your team on board. I mean, and also we feel really good about the whether you call them the support staff or, you know, partners to the advisor, the role that, I don't know where the role that they're playing, the value they're adding, turning the everyday calls into relationship building. Their job satisfaction goes through the roof. Their contribution to society, what they're doing, how they're making a difference, the skills they're learning, and they're naturally positioned to do it. Many of them are women, so it's a natural for them. Not that you have to be a woman to speak to women, but I mean, they are like this secret weapon we have on teams that just need a little bit of the tools and the training to be able to make I think so much more out of their client communication. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, really well said. Hey, and I know you're very good at staying in your lane. And I don't know if there's one more act in your journey here, but I've got to think, and maybe this already exists, that a client-facing website that, and maybe a credential, I don't know, in terms of an advisor who has been vetted in embedding this into their process. I don't know if that exists out there, but, you know, having a portal where the client you're talking about could go to just to sort of get their head around this. I don't know. Not sure if that exists.
Yes, it's something. We just spoke to a college women's alumni association. Very fun, amazing. I'll just tell you, it was a Saturday morning at Chief here in Los Angeles, and room full of highly educated women at an amazing university. And when we started and said, how many of you have a financial plan, out of a room of maybe 30, 2 hands went up. And then we said, that you understand, 1 hand went down. So we have a lot of, we've always talked about doing more direct, to women, because we know there is something there. But again, we've kind of chosen the path, through the advisor. But I do want to share, if this is not inspiration, and I don't know what is. We had a client event, and a woman attended. Her name is Andrea. Okay, she lives in my community. I live in Pacific Palisades, where all the fires happened, and the fire started on my street. It was really scary. My house was uninhabitable, but we were able to move back in. But my son's home burned, my grandkids' school burned. 100 people we know were helping. It's awful. So a friend of ours had attended a client event. Her words. I cried when she told me this story. She, as a result of our client event, her words, I had the confidence, putting that in quote, to call my insurance broker after your client event, and I maxed out the coverage for fire and everything else for my homeowner's insurance. When we went to dinner with them last February after the fire, sat there with her and her husband, and when her husband said, we are going to be, their house burned, when he said, we are going to be just fine because of Andrea, I cried. Because it was like, wow, here I am just, kind of doing what I love, hoping to make a difference. And in the end, wow, her confidence, which isn't something I can package and put on a guide, I can't put that on my website. She felt the confidence to call, and that one phone call has changed their life. So I have to think as advisors, right? Like, why did we get in this business, right? Like the woman we interviewed who bought life insurance 2 years before her husband died of cancer. Now she can stay in her home and send her kids to college. Like that persistence from the advisor to get life insurance, which I've met many advisors who say, Linda, I didn't come in this business to sell life insurance. And I say, well, it's not about you. Okay, but anyways, I'm getting a little snippy. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like the Andrea story is we have the ability to profoundly impact the outcome. And so I was just very touched by that. And so we love client advice. We hope to do more of them.
And I just have to say, like, the words matter. Like, I say to advisors all the time, you're not an insurance broker selling insurance products. Risk management is part of your process. Asset management and risk management needs to be hand in glove. Don't pitch it as a product. Position it as part of your process. Let them buy into that. All the pieces of the financial puzzle are put together by the process and by a good steward, right? With stewardship, not salesmanship. And I have to think that this has got to be part of the advisor's process. So again, Linda, phenomenal job. We're just scratching the surface. We need to do that webinar and go deeper into some of the action items here. But just to close, again, financiallyempowered.com, Linda Sherman and her crew on LinkedIn. Have them talk to your team, have them talk to your clients, embed this into your process. I think it'll serve you very well. So excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been just such a delight. Duncan, you're just so fantastic. So thank you so much for the honor of being here.
Thanks, and right back at you.
Thank you for listening to Always On with Duncan MacPherson, where our objective is to enable professionals to always be working on their business and on themselves. Want to learn more about Duncan and his team? Visit ParetoSystems.com. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Pareto Systems. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.